I'm dropping off the kids tomorrow. You're retired. You don't do anything. That was all she said. Not a greeting, not a pause. Just that, as if she were confirming a grocery delivery. I stood in the kitchen, hand still holding the phone, but she'd already hung up. Outside, the wind stirred the tips of the trees. Inside, everything felt suddenly still. The kettle hadn't even finished boiling. My second morning of retirement was supposed to be quiet. I had laid out a small stack of weekend brochures, a notebook for garden planning, and a library book I was halfway through. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon toast I'd made it for myself, just because I finally could. Now, it all felt foolish. Pointless, even. I set the phone down on the counter. My hand didn't tremble. It used to back when I had to balance work and Jonah's school meetings and stretch every dollar to pay for piano lessons Valeria later said were a waste of time. They hadn't asked. They never did. Somewhere along the way, it became an arrangement. I'm here, so they take. And now that I had finally stepped off the treadmill, they decided I was free labor. Free, disposable, silent. The part that stung most wasn't what she said. It was that Jonah let her say it. That he didn't call first. That maybe in his mind, I really didn't do anything anymore. I looked around the kitchen. A lemon tree clipping waited to be repotted. The bird feeder needed filling. The world had moved on from me apparently, but I hadn't asked it to. I walked over to the drawer by the fridge and pulled out a pad of paper, wrote down 3 names, Evan, Lily, Rowan, drew 3 lines beneath each. I didn't know yet what those lines would hold, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to be the one who showed up unprepared. She didn't knock. Just opened the door like it was hers. It was 6:58 a.m., still gray outside. I hadn't had coffee yet. The kids followed behind her like a tired parade, Evan with his headphones already in Lily, carrying nothing but her phone, and little Rowan, dragging a rolling suitcase that thumped against every stair. Valeria handed me a printed schedule color-coded. Snacks are labeled. Rowan gets fussy with dairy. Evan skips breakfast, don't bother. She didn't meet my eyes. Just pointed to a paper-clipped stack of emergency contacts and turned to leave. Try not to bore them, she added at the door. They're not responsible for your wasted life. Then she was gone. Just the sound of the car reversing and the sharp turn of tires too fast for a residential street. I stood there holding laminated meal charts like an unpaid employee, watching Evan toss his shoes in different directions. Wi-Fi, he asked, not even looking at me. Morning, I said. He stared. Wi-Fi? I didn't answer. I walked down the hall, unplugged the router, and tucked it behind the vacuum. Breakfast was eggs and toast. Lily stared at it like it was offensive. Is this what you eat every day? No, I said. Some days I skip. Rowan dumped his backpack in the hallway and sat on the couch with his feet on the cushions. It wasn't defiance, not really. It was learned indifference. By noon, Evan leaned over his plate and muttered, "Mom says you just want to feel needed." I looked up from where I was rinsing a dish. Then she misunderstood, I said. Lunch was grilled cheese and tomato soup. They barely touched it. But I noticed Lily peeled the crusts off, like she used to when she was 5. I remembered. She didn't. They went quiet around 3-0 board probably after realizing there was no Wi-Fi, no Uber Eats, no screens. I sat at the kitchen table and began planning dinner. Something warm, simple. I wasn't here to entertain, and I wasn't here to be erased. The house was dim by 7. The children had retreated to their rooms with exaggerated sighs, doors half closed like a soft protest. I sat alone at the kitchen table, tea cooling beside my wrist, and listened to the creaks in the walls that used to soothe me. Now they just reminded me I wasn't really alone. I was being tolerated. They hadn't touched the dinner I made. Baked chicken rice, roasted carrots. Nothing unusual, nothing strange. Evan said it smelled old. Lily opened a bag of chips. Rowan tried to feed his portion to the dog, which we didn't have. I cleared the plates without comment. Earlier, I had flipped on an old black and white movie. They laughed at it, then at the books on my shelves. Evan pointed out the torn corners on the spines like it was a flaw. I didn't argue. I'd raised a child already. I wasn't here to prove anything. I poured the rest of the tea into the sink and walked down the hall. The sound of tapping fingers and whispered giggles behind their doors reminded me of late nights with Jonah, before cell phones, when he used to draw comic strips by flashlight under the blankets. Back in the living room, I opened the laptop I hadn't touched since last tax season. It took a minute to power on. Dust on the keyboard. Familiar in a way. I logged into my old social media mostly out of habit, half curiosity. There she was. Valeria, smiling in a red bikini top, sunglasses perched high on her forehead, her hand draped over the thigh of a man I didn't recognize. Location tagged Arizona. The caption read, "Freedom tastes better with the right company." My breath caught, then slowed. I stared for a long time, just long enough to feel my pulse steady again. I closed the tab, then reached for a legal pad and a pen. I wrote today's date. Underlined it. No rush, no panic. If she wanted space, I'd give it to her. Just not the kind she expected. The next morning brought a different kind of silence. Less sullen, more watchful. Lily came into the kitchen without her phone. Just stood there while I rinsed dishes. "Grandma," she said, her voice smaller than yesterday's sighs and eye rolls. "Did you really not want us here? Mom said you didn't." I turned to face her, drying my hands on a towel. "I didn't say that." She didn't respond, just looked at the floor, then wandered out. Later, Evan asked if he could use my laptop. I handed it over. No questions. I wasn't standing behind him, but the screen was reflected in the microwave door. Tabs were already open. Valeria's accounts. Hotel booking. Phoenix. 2 nights. Flight itinerary. 1 adult, 1 guest. A long text thread with a man named Devon. His messages had hearts. Hers had photographs. Evan paused too long on one of them, then slammed the tab shut. "You didn't see that," he said. I didn't argue, just nodded once and walked away. Later, Rowan climbed onto the couch beside me while I was folding towels. "Is it true you made Dad cry once?" I smiled, then frowned. "No, but I think he's cried alone more than anyone realizes." He picked up one of the towels and helped fold it. Dinner that night was soup and cornbread. Evan asked if he could help stir. Lily set the table. Rowan didn't drop a single napkin. They didn't apologize. Didn't suddenly call me grandma with affection. But they didn't sneer at the food, or change the channel without asking, or leave the dishes on the table when they finished. The air between us felt cautious, like something was cracking open, but no one wanted to be the first to say what they saw. After they went to bed, I wrote down everything I remembered from the screen, not to use against Valeria, but because I knew what forgetting had cost me before. Evan found me in the living room just after lunch, his shoulders tight, tablet pressed to his chest like it was burning him. "I think you should read this," he whispered. I took the tablet gently. The screen lit up to a group chat titled "Escape Plan." Valeria's messages lined up in neat, confident rows. "Taking the kids with me. Jonah won't fight back. He never does. She's old. She'll fold." I didn't gasp. Didn't blink more than once. The words were sharp but not surprising, not after years of quiet erosion. Evan stood there waiting for anger, waiting for shouting. I simply tapped into another folder. Photos, suitcases in the back of a car I didn't recognize, the kids' favorite toys stuffed into plastic bags. No mention of Jonah. Not a single plan, including him. Just extraction. Evan swallowed. "Are we in trouble?" "No," I said, keeping my voice steady. But someone's about to be very surprised. I set the tablet down and walked to the drawer where I kept paper ink and my old accounting stamps. Then I printed everything, sorted it, labeled each page with dates and times, no trembling hands, no elevated pulse. By the time Lily wandered in, the dining table looked like a quiet war room, orderly, efficient, inevitable. "What's all that?" she asked. "Just things your mother forgot to delete." She didn't ask more. Children sense when truth is shifting under their feet. Some instinct tells them to move slowly or not at all. When evening came and the kids settled in with a movie, I stepped onto the porch and made a single phone call. A small firm downtown people who still remembered me from the days I helped organize their ledgers during tax crunch season. "I need help," I said, "and I need it handled quietly." They didn't ask why. They only asked when. I looked back through the screen door at Evan, Lily, and Rowan. 3 shadows huddled closer than they'd been all week. "Tomorrow," I said. I didn't need revenge. I needed truth laid bare once and for all. Routine found its place slowly. I didn't enforce it like a warden. I just offered it quietly, like a rhythm waiting to be joined. Breakfast at 8. Chores written in pencil on the fridge. Reading hour at 10. Walks before dinner. By the 3rd day, they stopped resisting. Rowan asked if he could butter the pan for grilled cheese. He burned the first slice but beamed anyway. Lily took it upon herself to fold the laundry. Most of it came out looking like soft origami, but she folded each shirt with both hands. Even Evan, watchful, skeptical. Evan started helping me build the grocery list. He asked about unit prices, listened when I explained why certain foods went further for less. They weren't sweet. They were paying attention. That evening, the phone rang. Jonah. "Hey, Mom," he said, voice low, clipped. She said it was a work conference, out west somewhere. I didn't ask too many questions. He cleared his throat. "Thanks for taking them." I held the silence a moment too long, not out of anger, just to see if he'd fill it. He didn't. "They're asking hard things, Jonah," I said gently. "Questions about you, about her." He sighed. "Yeah, I figured. Then I'll come by this week. See them." I didn't mention the chat logs, or the printed messages stacked in a folder tucked into the drawer with the old birthday cards he'd once made me from construction paper. I wanted him to walk into the house and see what I saw. 3 children trying to be brave in a space that finally made room for them. When the call ended, I stood by the window watching the porch light flicker in the breeze. The grocery list was still on the table. Evan's handwriting under mine. I didn't know what Jonah expected to find when he came, but I knew what he would. Jonah arrived just past 6 on Thursday, the sun low behind him. His shoulders slumped, like the week had folded him in half. He barely got through the door before the kids rushed him. Rowan yelling, "Dad," and launching into his arms, Lily clinging to his side, even Evan hovering close enough to be counted. He looked surprised, a little stunned. "They're calmer here," he said. After a moment, his hand still resting on Rowan's back. "They're different." I nodded, then walked to the cabinet and retrieved the folder. No explanation. Just placed it gently on the table beside him. Jonah hesitated before opening it, but when he did, the room seemed to still. 3 pages in his hand froze. There were printed screenshots of Valeria's texts with Devon plans laid out in sharp, confident language. Photos of packed suitcases, the itinerary out of state. One message circled in red, Jonah's 2 checked out to notice. "I'll handle the rest." I didn't know he whispered, barely audible. She said I'd ruined them, that they needed time away from me, that I couldn't handle them. He didn't cry, not exactly, but his face cracked in places. He sank into the chair like he couldn't hold his weight anymore. The kids stood around him, confused, but watching. Lily reached for his hand. "Can we stay here, Dad?" she asked, voice quiet. Jonah didn't speak. He just pulled her close, then Rowan, then motioned for Evan to join them. No one hesitated. I didn't interrupt. I stepped back and let the silence settle. He didn't need a lecture. He needed a mirror. And he finally saw what was being done to him, not just by her, but by his own avoidance. He had the proof now. Not just on paper, in his arms. Jonah stayed 2 nights without being asked. He took the guest room, folded his own towels, and didn't leave his plate on the table. It felt like something unspoken had shifted, not just between us, but in how he held himself. The kids leaned into him slowly. Evan shadowed him during breakfast, offering to crack eggs. Lily left a book on his nightstand. Rowan waited for Jonah to finish brushing his teeth before climbing into bed next to him on the first night. By morning, they were making pancakes as if they'd always done it. Jonah hovered awkwardly at first, then surrendered to the rhythm, measuring flour, wiping spills, letting Rowan pour syrup until the plate nearly drowned. "How long have I been missing this?" he asked, not to anyone in particular. I didn't answer. He didn't need one. In the afternoon, we drove to town. He filed temporary custody paperwork just enough to pause anything Valeria might be planning. He closed the joint account and opened a new one in his name only. He left the rest to his attorney. "I should have done this years ago," he said, eyes fixed on the steering wheel. Later that night, I showed him Valeria's latest post, just to be certain he wasn't still searching for her shadow. She was by a pool, glass in hand, head tilted toward the same man. The caption read, "Starting over. Finally." Jonah stared for a moment too long, then handed the phone back. No reaction. No curse. No stunned silence. Just release. I didn't push. He'd already turned toward something better. After the kids were tucked in, he stood in the doorway and asked if he could take them home in a few days, not back to that house, but to an apartment near his work. They're calmer now. I don't want to lose that. He wouldn't. Not this time. She didn't knock. Valeria walked in like nothing had changed, like we were still waiting for her to take the lead. "I'm here for my kids," she said, setting her bag down as if she lived here. Then she saw Jonah. And beside him, Alan, his attorney, seated quietly with a leather folder on his lap. Valeria blinked. "What is this we're filing for temporary custody?" Jonah said evenly. "Emergency status effective immediately." She scoffed, hand on her hip. "You think she's better than me?" She flicked her chin toward me like I wasn't standing 5 feet away. Jonah didn't look at me. He didn't need to. "She already is," he said. Behind the hallway wall, I could see a small line of toes. Rowan, Lily, Evan, peeking from behind the corner. Quiet. Watching. Valeria's eyes dropped to the table. There sat the folder, the one Jonah had carried with him to the courthouse. Inside the screenshots, the printed messages, the photos she never thought we'd see. Her bravado shifted. The smirk cracked. "You went through my accounts?" Jonah didn't flinch. "You left the evidence behind?" She scanned the pages, her mouth tightening with each one. "This won't hold. You think this makes you a better parent?" Jonah's reply was calm. Not cruel. Just final. "No. But I'm finally being one." Valeria stared for another second, then another. Her eyes darted to the hallway, maybe hoping the kids would run to her. They didn't. She grabbed her bag again. No yelling, no storming, just a stiff spine and a silence she'd never once managed to carry. The front door clicked shut behind her. That was all. No scene, no apology. Just the sound of leaving, and the house somehow felt fuller without her in it. The weeks moved like water, quiet, steady, changing everything in small, certain ways. The lawyers took over what needed sorting. Jonah met with them twice a week, sometimes more. Custody filings, financial arrangements, address changes. Each visit brought another paper, signed another tie loosened from the life he used to defend without thinking. But here in the house, things softened. There was noise again, but not the kind that strained. The clink of breakfast dishes, the sound of sneakers thudding up the stairs, laughter in the backyard when Rowan tried to teach the dog a trick he made up on the spot. Jonah stayed. He didn't make a speech about it, just stopped packing. The kids unpacked slowly, first toothbrushes, then books, then the way they asked questions without flinching. One Saturday afternoon, we planted basil and tomatoes in the corner patch by the shed. I handed each of them a small spade, expecting the usual resistance. But no one rolled their eyes. No one groaned. They dug, watered, checked the soil. Rowan asked if plants could get lonely. Evan asked what made tomato vines twist. Lily took photos quietly, seriously, like it mattered to remember. That night, after they were all in bed, Jonah joined me on the porch. We didn't need words, but he offered them anyway. I let her convince me you were the problem, he said. That your silence meant guilt. That stepping away was safer than stepping in. I didn't interrupt. I just looked ahead, then said, silence is useful. Until it protects the wrong person. He nodded. We sat for a long while watching the porch light flicker and catch moths. The kind of quiet I hadn't known in years, earned quiet. Shared. Thank you, he said softly, for not giving up on us. I didn't smile for him. I smiled for the upstairs windows glowing faint behind us, the sound of 3 children sleeping in rooms that finally felt like theirs again. Because sometimes when someone tries to erase you, the best answer is to root deeper until the whole house grows around your name.